We moved into my grandparents' house in 2016 after they decided to downsize. I was 9 at the time. They had built the place in the early 90s, nestled on 5 acres on the outskirts of a small southern town. Woods and open fields surrounded the property, and a slow, muddy river curved past our southern fence line. Only one neighbor shared our boundary, their land a crooked patch of overgrown acreage with a house that looked like it was sinking into the ground. The neighbor's house was old. The original farmhouse dated back to the 1920s, but it had been patched together over the years, additions tacked on with no sense of plan. The siding always looked wet, no matter the weather. The yard was worse, tangled bushes, broken fountains, weed-choked gnomes, and trash that looked fossilized into the landscape. A rusted lawnmower sat in the middle of the grass like it had died mid-job, and no one ever bothered to move it. It was the kind of house that made you hold your breath when walking by. At the time, 2 elderly sisters, Violet and Agnes, lived there along with 3 kids. Violet rarely moved from her faded green rocking chair on the porch, staring blankly at the trees. Agnes was more alert but walked like her bones hurt. Both had to be in their 70s. The kids were their grandkids. The boy, Liam, was my age and in my grade. The girls, Allison and Kelsey, were twins and the same age as my younger sister. Liam was strange. I didn't like him, but since we were in the same class, we got grouped together often. He took that as permission to show up at my house uninvited. I'd be playing in my room, turn around, and he'd just be there. Once, I saw him doing cannonballs in our pool. Another time, he walked into our kitchen and started eating cold pizza straight from the fridge. He was obsessed with anime, quoting Japanese lines I didn't understand and getting upset when I didn't laugh. He had a dark look sometimes, like he was imagining something violent. Once, he chased me with garden shears, laughing like it was a joke. Another time, on a rickety bridge over the creek that bordered our properties. I swear he tried to push me in. He said it was a joke, but his grin told me otherwise. The twins were quieter, nearly invisible. Their clothes were always dirty, and they had speech issues that made them hard to understand. They flinched easily, and they always looked hungry. Their dad was in and out of jail, so he wasn't around. Their mom, Teresa, was the first adult in that house who seemed different. Tall, heavyset, with long curly hair and oversized glasses. She looked out of place compared to the others. Her clothes were neat, her hair styled. She smiled at me the first time we met like she had been waiting for me. She asked for help with a hose that wouldn't turn on near our yard. I twisted the spigot and it worked just fine. She clapped her hands and said I was strong, then asked, "Did you know you have a third eye?" I blinked, confused. She told me we all had one, a spiritual eye to see the truth. Before I could ask anything else, she beckoned me into her house. Inside, the smell hit me first. Spoiled food, mildew, something worse. Garbage bags were ripped open, plates of rotting food on every surface, dirty diapers behind furniture. I tried to leave, but Teresa took my wrist and led me upstairs. Her room was the complete opposite. Spotless, decorated in pink, with porcelain dolls and antique furniture. It smelled like rose water and old perfume. She had me sit on a cushioned stool and retrieved a silver tray with a black candle, a crystal, and a leather-bound book. A pentagram was carved into its cover. I recognized the symbol. My family is Catholic. Panicked, I noticed more pentagrams on the mirror under the rug, carved into the floor. I blurted out an excuse about needing to go and ran. In 2019, Agnes died of a heart attack in that house. I heard she collapsed in front of the kids. At her funeral, everyone looked numb, except one woman I didn't recognize, sobbing loudly in the second pew. No one acknowledged her. That same year, Liam disappeared. Rumor was he tried to harm one of the twins and was sent to a psychiatric facility. My parents sat my sister and me down that night and told us never to go near that family again. That's when it all made sense. Eventually, the family moved away, leaving Violet behind. She died alone in 2020. The house went up for auction. My old teacher, Mrs. S., and her husband bought it. They tore down most of it but kept the original 1920s section, the part where Teresa's room had been. They invited us to see the renovations. Upstairs, in what used to be Teresa's room, I felt nauseous. Even with fresh carpet, I knew the pentagram was still there, like the floor remembered. I faked a headache and left. Last year, Mrs. S asked me to dog sit. I agreed. Easy money. The first few nights were quiet. But on the last night, one of the dogs, Henry, started barking at the stairs. Muffin backed away, whimpering. Then came the sound thump. Something moved upstairs. I didn't check. I locked the door and left. Now it's 2025. We hadn't heard a word about that family until recently. A girl from school said she saw Teresa at a farmer's market in a nearby town. Apparently, she started a religious group. Calls herself a truth seer. They live deep in the woods. Flyers are showing up around town. I don't trust it. I don't trust her. She neglected her kids, left her mother to rot. And I think she brought something dark into that house, something that never left. I still dream of her and Liam, standing at the foot of my bed, silent. Even now, when I pass that house, I get chills. The fresh paint and new furniture can't hide what happened. That place remembers, and I don't think it ever let go. My name is Keegan, and I live in Michigan with my parents. High school was a pretty average time for me, nothing too crazy, but I met a lot of new people and made a few good friends along the way. Most of the time, I'd only hang out with them at the local community center. We'd play basketball or hit the gym together. It was a chill routine. This was back in freshman year, right when summer break was creeping up. I was hyped. I'd be starting driver's ed and even planned on picking up a part-time job just to get a little money flowing. That's when things started shifting. One of the people I hung out with was a guy named Clayton. He was a year younger than me and still in middle school back then. We weren't best friends, but we got along well enough to hang out once in a while. My dad and I even took him to a Detroit Pistons game once because he was a huge basketball fan. He was so excited it was his first real game. But as time went on, I started getting busier, and that's when things with him started to feel off. Clayton didn't take it well when I told him I couldn't hang out. He'd get moody, either sad or flat out angry. He had serious anger issues which only got worse when things didn't go his way. I remember one time when I told him I had chores and couldn't come out. When I finally checked my phone later, I saw he had removed me on Snapchat. I texted him on Messenger to ask what his problem was. He just assumed I was lying and avoiding him. And to be fair, I had started avoiding him sometimes. He was becoming overbearing and I'd make up excuses to keep some space. It didn't help that every time I said I was busy, he seemed to take it personally, like I had betrayed him. Things escalated. One night, after the sun went down, I heard a knock on the door of the apartment I was staying in at the time. When I opened it, Clayton was just standing there, uninvited, unannounced. He didn't say a word, just stared at me with this cold, emotionless look before walking off without a sound. I had no idea what to make of it. After that, I turned off my Snap map. I didn't want him tracking where I was. He eventually added me back, and for a while, I tried to keep things cool. But then I got a message from a friend of mine, Nick. He didn't live nearby, but we kept in touch online. Nick also knew Clayton, and more importantly, he knew Clayton's ex-girlfriend. What he told me turned my stomach. Apparently, Clayton had once held a knife to his ex's throat and assaulted her. I was shocked, sickened, and scared. I cut him off instantly. Removed him on every platform without a second thought. Before I could even finish that process, he messaged me on Instagram, freaking out, asking why I was removing him. I told him I just needed some time for myself and that I'd add him back later. That was a lie, I just didn't want to provoke him. I was already creeped out. A few nights later, I was home alone. My parents had gone to a nearby town to have dinner with some friends. I wasn't expecting anything out of the ordinary. Then came the knock. I checked the peephole. No one was there. I cracked open the door to look around, nothing. Probably a prank, I figured. But then, just to be sure, I checked the window by the sidewalk. The outside light was dead, but something flashed in the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was a reflection from a car. But then I saw the figure, tall, motionless, and unmistakable. It was Clayton. I opened the window and told him to leave, that I didn't want to see him. He asked me to let him in, said he needed to tell me something. I told him no. That's when he lifted something in his hand and I finally saw what it was. A knife. My heart nearly stopped. I told him I was calling the police and he bolted before I could even dial. The officers showed up not long after. I gave them as much detail as I could, but there was no sign of him. No leads. That night changed everything. It made me realize just how close I'd come to something unthinkable. I'm certain he came there with the intent to hurt me, maybe even worse. If I hadn't distanced myself when I did, who knows what would have happened. I might have been just another one of his victims. Even now, I still get chills thinking about that stare. I don't know where he is now, but I pray I never find out. This happened in late 2022. What I expected to be a chill, fun first date ended up becoming one of the creepiest experiences of my life. I'd matched with a girl named Emily on a dating app. We'd been talking for a couple of weeks, nothing intense, just small talk and bonding over shared interests. Horror movies came up often, and when the movie Smile was released, we both agreed it would make for the perfect first date. We decided on a late Thursday showing, 10:15 p.m. at this small, older theater just outside town. It was kind of run down but charming in that nostalgic way. I offered to drive, picked her up around 9:30. She seemed nice, polite, soft-spoken. A little reserved at first, but she started warming up as we talked more during the drive. When we got to the theater, the parking lot was nearly empty. I even joked about how the place looked like it belonged in a horror movie, flickering neon signs, cracked pavement, that eerie kind of quiet that settles after dark. Inside, the lobby was deserted except for a bored-looking guy working the concessions. I asked if the show was full, and he laughed, saying we were the only ones who had bought tickets for that showing. At the time, it sounded perfect. Private theater, no distractions, just us and the movie. We headed to Theater 6 and picked seats smack in the center, a few rows from the back. Emily complained about how cold it was inside, so I offered her my hoodie. We were joking around and talking when the trailers started rolling. That's when it all started to go sideways. Right as the last preview ended and the lights dimmed for the movie, I noticed someone walk in. I barely caught it out of the corner of my eye, just a figure walking slowly up the stairs. No phone light, no looking around for a seat. Just moving deliberately. And then he sat right behind us. Out of all the empty seats in that theater, he chose the one directly behind me. Not one row back, not a few seats away. Directly behind. Emily turned and gave me a seriously kind of look. I just smirked and whispered, "Figures." But then I started to feel it, this weird tension. You know when you just know someone's staring at you? That sharp feeling between your shoulder blades? That's what it was. I leaned forward a bit and tried to ignore it. A few minutes into the movie, I snuck a glance behind me. He wasn't watching the screen. He was staring at us. Not subtly, not even pretending. Just eyes locked on us like we were the show. He was maybe in his late 40s. Clean-shaven, pale, wearing a dark hoodie. His face was blank, unreadable. Not zoned out, just gone. I whispered to Emily, "He's just staring at us." She nodded and whispered back, "I know." We tried to shake it off, to focus on the movie, but every few minutes I'd glance back. Every single time, his eyes hadn't moved. Still locked in. No blinking. No expression. Just watching. Then it got worse. At one point, I felt breath. A warm, slow exhale right behind my neck. I froze. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. He had leaned in close, too close. I turned and snapped, "Dude, seriously?" He didn't react. Just slowly leaned back into his seat, still staring. That was it for me. I whispered to Emily, "Let's move." We grabbed our stuff and shifted down to the front row in the far corner. Terrible angle, but at least it gave us space. I couldn't concentrate on the movie at all after that. My eyes kept flicking back, and every time I looked, he was still watching. Never once looked at the screen. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Coming down the stairs. Emily clutched my arm. We sat frozen. The steps stopped behind us, maybe a few rows up. I didn't look. I didn't want to look. He stayed there for what felt like minutes, just standing. And then he walked back up. I leaned in and whispered, "We're leaving." We waited for a quiet moment in the movie and slipped out. As we reached the hallway, I looked back through the little window in the theater door. He was standing in the aisle, not watching the movie. Still watching us. At the front, I told the concessions guy that someone was acting seriously weird. His face changed instantly. "Again?" he said. "Wait, what do you mean again?" He hesitated. "That guy's been coming in randomly for weeks. Always late shows. Never buys anything. You're not the first to complain. So why hasn't anyone kicked him out?" The worker shrugged, clearly uncomfortable. "Management says unless he breaks a rule or touches someone, we can't do anything." Emily looked like she was on the verge of tears. She asked if someone could walk us to the car. One of the janitors did. The man didn't follow us, at least not that we saw. But the whole ride back, I was paranoid. Kept checking the rearview mirror. I dropped Emily off and went home, but I kept thinking, what if he saw my license plate? What if he did follow us at a distance? For weeks, I was paranoid, always watching my surroundings. I told a friend of mine who's a cop about it, and he was pissed. Said the theater had every right to kick the guy out. No law says you have to wait until someone actually does something to act. Emily and I stayed in touch briefly but never went out again. I think it was just too unsettling for both of us. The whole thing left a bad taste. I haven't been back to that theater since. And when I checked the reviews, nothing, not a single mention of that man. Makes me wonder how many others have had the same experience and just stayed quiet.